Hi, I'm Karen.
Hi, I'm Renee.
Today we're making chocolate cream pie.
And chocolate cream pie is one of my favorites. I mean, if you love chocolate, this is just a sinful pie. It's wonderful. But one of the scariest things about making pies for people is the crust. A lot of people had crust. I myself, for years, could not make a crust. And I would go and buy the Pillsbury crust because they were good.
It's intimidating.
And I couldn't make a decent one. And what I found out was I just had the wrong recipe. So it's really important to have a good recipe for crust. And this one is actually very flaky and tender, and it's a really good recipe.
Well, I already see the difference. We got it in a plastic bag.
Right, and one of the reasons we have it in a plastic bag is because this is the way we started. So for pastry flour, for what you need for this recipe for the pie, you'll take a half a cup of cake flour, which you can find in the store, plus a half a tablespoon, and you're going to combine that with 1 cup of regular all-purpose flour plus a half a tablespoon of all-purpose flour, and that will give you this, which is what you need to make the pie.
That's a very precise recipe then, because you're taking a cup, leveling it off, and then adding that additional tablespoon of flour to it. Okay, very good.
Okay, and then you're going to take 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and you add that to the flour. You also add 1/8 teaspoon of baking powder. You mix that up, throw it in the bag, and then you put it in the freezer for half an hour.
Okay, so we'll have these ingredients on thebakingshow.com so that you can look those up and make sure you get all those precise.
Now once it comes out of the freezer, after your half an hour, it's nice and cold, I'm going to take it and we're going to put it into the food processor.
Stand back and don't breathe.
There you go. Okay, now once we have it in the food processor, we're going to turn it on and we're going to pulse it a few times just to make sure everything's mixed. Then we're going to take 9 ounces of butter. A lot of people use unsalted butter in their crust. I happen to like salted butter. I just like the taste better, so I use that. You cut that up into tiny little pieces, and that is kept in the freezer because everything has to be ice cold. So Karen, why don't you just put this on and let that mix for a minute. And I'm going to get the butter out of the freezer. Okay, so we've mixed the flour up, so we can just turn this off. I'm going to take the top off again. Just tap that down so the flour stays in there. And this is the butter. It's all been cut up into little pieces, like this. And then we're just going to take that and we're going to pour it into the food processor. I love this thing.
I know. A lot of people think they have to cut it into uniform chunks. You don't have to do that.
Just freeform, just cut it.
Yep.
All right, then we're going to lock it back, put that on top, and we're going to let it mix again. Okay, it's been mixing for a bit, so now we're going to check it. And again, tap it down, otherwise you get flour all over the place. And it looks kind of like crumbs on the inside. I don't know if we can get a good look at that, but it looks like crumbs. Okay, and then we're going to add a teaspoon and a half of cider vinegar.
Vinegar in a pie.
I know.
It tastes wonderful though. I can attest to that. It's fantastic.
I don't know. All right, so we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vinegar and half. Okay, we put the vinegar in, and now we're going to add the 5 tablespoons of ice water. It has to be cold because everything's got to be cold.
And you literally mean ice water. There are ice cubes in that. So
that's right.
Very good tip there too.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now sometimes it depends on the weather, it depends on how hot it is, how cold it is. Sometimes you'll find 5 is fine, and sometimes you'll find you need to add more than 5. So let's see what happens. So let's take a look, see how it's progressing. And it's coming along pretty good. We're just going to scrape the sides because you've got to make sure all the flour gets mixed in. And this may need a little bit more water, but now that we've scraped the sides down, let's give it another turn. And it looks like 5 tablespoons is all we needed. Look at that. We have a dough. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off. And now we're going to bring it over to the board and we're going to roll it. Okay, so now we're going to roll the dough out and fit it into our pie pan. You want to put flour on the bottom and put a little bit of flour on top so your rolling pin doesn't stick to it. You're just going to put it out to the shape of a pie pan.
So the way you do that to get the round shape is to just keep shifting position, right?
Right.
Just roll a couple of times one direction and then shift it around. That was always my biggest challenge, just trying to get it
Actually,
round.
the round's not too round. Never actually comes out round. Rectangles are hard.
Yes, they are.
They're tough to shape.
So I got the pie plate here, and what we're going to do is hold it over and see how close we're getting.
Okay,
I think
put
we're
it on
pretty
top.
close.
We're good. You have to make it a little bit bigger so that you can sink it into the pie pan.
Great.
So we're just going to pick it up now, and
There you go.
just roll it back over. And then we want to make sure it sits down in the pan.
Great. So now I want to see your special technique for how you form the top of the crust.
I only had a special technique.
I know you do. I have seen your pies.
Okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to take it and roll it under a little bit.
Don't waste any of that good crust.
So it comes this way. And then we're just going to put it back on top of the pie. And you want it up over the pie so you can do a little crimping. So we're just going to go around and shape it like that. Just put it underneath. And then if it's too much, like this is a little lumpy here, so we're going to cut a little bit off. We're just going to tear a little bit off because there's too much excess. And then we're going to put it in like this. Okay, now once you have your pie crust formed, next thing we're going to do is, because this is a chocolate cream pie, it doesn't get baked in the oven, but the pie shell has to be baked. So what we're going to do is, before we pop it in the oven, we're going to weigh it down, because if you don't weigh the crust down, it just balloons up.
Right.
And it's ugly.
So what do you use to weigh them? And some folks use beans. Some folks use, the pie.
There are pie beads that you can buy.
Yes.
I use the beans. They're really cheap, and you can use them over and over again. I've had the beans I'm going to use for about 8 years now. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to use a coffee filter. These are fabulous. This is a commercial-sized coffee filter. It's great for a 9-inch pie. You just put it in, put it to the sides, just make sure it's in there good.
And you can just bake it, huh?
Yeah, you just bake it, you put the beans in, and we're going to fill this up so that the beans are weighing the pie down, and then make sure they're against the sides too. But you don't want to go over the coffee filter because you don't want beans in the crust. You're going to place this in a hot oven. It's 425 degrees, and we're going to bake it for 20 minutes. The reason you put this in a hot oven is to help set the crimp in the crust before the butter starts to, heats up too much and starts softening. So that's why, and you bake it for 20 minutes, and then you take it out. You're going to lift this out. Usually I take some of the beans out first and then lift the rest out with the coffee filter. And then you take a fork and you're going to prick the bottom and the sides all over. And then you're going to put it back in the oven for 5 to 10 minutes till it gets golden brown. Okay, for the filling, we're going to use 2 large eggs. We're going to use a 1/4 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder, which is in there already, with 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. Then we're going to use a 1/4 cup of half and half. Mixed in the pot is just 2 3/4 cups of, it's a cup of half and half, and the rest is whole milk. Then we're going to use 2/3 cup sugar, pinch of salt, 6 ounces of finely chopped bittersweet chocolate, 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I've used salted because I always do, and 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract.
Okay, Renee, so how do we start?
Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our cornstarch with the chocolate. We're going to take the eggs, put them in.
Okay.
And we're going to beat that up. There you go. Just dump it right in there. And we're going to beat that up a little bit. And then we're going to add the milk. And this is a 1/4 cup of half and half.
Now add the milk.
And we're going to whisk this all together. And you want to get it mixed up pretty good.
That's where it takes muscles.
Yes.
And
we're going to build some muscles this way. And you want to make sure you go all around the sides to scrape off the sides of the bowl and get that all incorporated. Thank you. Alright, so that's pretty well mixed. Now the next part of this, because it is a filling, we're going to cook it on the stove. So we're going to take the rest of the milk, and we're going to take the sugar and the salt. We're going to add it all together, and we're going to cook it on the stove till it boils. You want to make sure that you stir this constantly. Okay, now our milk is just about ready to boil. And then when it gets to this point, it kind of rises real fast, so you want to be able to turn the stove off. Okay, and then we're going to take a 1/4, put that in there, take a 1/4 cup of this. We're going to put it in here and whisk it in. This is just to get this up to temp a little bit because there are raw eggs in here and we don't want them cooking and lumping when you put it in the hot mixture, so that's why you do that. Alright, then we're going to take this, we're going to pour it back in here. Alright, and then we're going to turn the stove back on and cook it until it's thick. Now you constantly want to be stirring. And you want to lower it just a little, so it's at about medium.
And so you don't need to whisk it, you can just stir it.
You can just stir it, but you want to make sure you go around the sides and all over, and as you're stirring it, as it starts to get hotter, you'll see it start to thicken.
So Renee, the texture now is thickening, it's starting to bubble a little bit, so we're whisking because we saw a couple of lumps in there.
And that's what you want, and you want it to get thick, kind of the consistency of pudding.
Pudding, looks like it's really close. Do I boil it then?
It can boil, yeah.
Okay. So it's nice and steamy.
And thick.
And thick.
And this is when you add the chocolate. We're going to whisk that in.
Okay.
And we add the butter. Whisk that in and let it melt.
Great. And how can you go wrong with that combination?
Right? How fabulous is it? Oh, that's nice and thick. Ooh, that's so nice. And we're going to add the vanilla.
Okay.
Now, once this is melted, everything, the chocolate and the butter is melted, everything's mixed in, we are going to run it through a sieve. Because we use the cornstarch, we have the eggs, sometimes you get little lumps in here, so this is to make sure that your pie comes out nice and smooth. So you just take a sieve
and pour away?
And just pour it right in.
Okay, I want to burn it.
You good. And then you can take a spatula, or you can take a spoon, back of a wooden spoon, and you're just going to press it through the sieve. And if you have any lumps, it's going to stay behind.
Looks fantastic.
And then we're going to put a piece of plastic wrap over the top of this so it doesn't form a skin. And put it, let it cool for a little bit, and then put it in the fridge. And when you get it ice cold, we're going to pour it in the pie crust. And then we just put the whipped cream on top, and we got a chocolate cream pie.
So the pie is out of the oven, and we filled it with the nice filling, and it's cooled a little bit now. And so now it's time to top it.
Right, and usually we would top this with whipped cream. You can use homemade, you can use a Cool Whip.
My husband is lactose intolerant, so I'm always looking for different toppings to put on something like this. So how about if we shape some white chocolate today on top of this one?
That's great. I would never have thought of that.
Just soften the chocolate a little bit in the microwave, not very much at all, and then just use a vegetable peeler to put some decorative curls on the top. You can do it all over the top of the pie, or you can just choose to put it right here in the middle and have this concentration of beautiful white chocolate.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Another great recipe. So thank you very much, Renee. You can find this recipe out on thebakingshow.com. Thanks.
Bye.